Gracias de nuevo. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you this afternoon. If you could please present yourselves and let us know where we are today.
I'm Ofelia Esparza. We are at our studio, Tonali Studio in East Los Angeles, in Old Town Maravilla, the place where I was born and where I still live. We're part of this community, and I'm here with my daughter, Rosanna.
I'm Rosanna Esparza Aarons, Ofelia's daughter. And my mother and I, along with my sister and another colleague, brought this place together, this art space called Tonali Studio, and then a little boutique next door, Colibri Boutique, here in East LA. And we're happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Once again, we're here with Señora Ofelia and her daughter Rosanna, who are the famed doñas of altar making along with her family. If you could tell us a little bit of the history before we begin about the importance of altares and ofrendas for Dia de los Muertos.
Well, I feel it's very important through this tradition. First of all, you remember you're honoring your ancestors, your loved ones. And I say we honor them not how they died, but how they lived and how they were loved. And that is how I learned about my ancestors. My mother, it was like her mission for us, for me and my sisters to know who her Mama Pola was, who her mother Consuelo was, who her great-grandfather Justo Tinoco, I knew his name. Now, it was like as if I knew Mama Pola, although I never met her, but I knew her intimately through my mother's stories, and it was important for her to talk about her, how she disciplined her, how she taught her how to cook and work. And so this tradition of altares bridges generations, bridges countries, not borders, and even cultures. But most of all, it's a way of knowing your history, knowing who you are, and what a legacy of remembrance that we all have or can have. And to know that you're cherished even after death is quite powerful. Your existence has meaning more than in addition to your life with your family.
And could you tell me a little bit about your experience learning about altares and growing up?
Yeah, as a young child, we had several altares. I lived with my grandmother as a young baby. There's 9 children. I just want to let you know my mom has 9 children, and I'm the middle one, the first girl. And so I had 4 older brothers, and they lived in a really small house. And so when I came along, I ended up living with my grandmother. So that experience of living with her, the altar was really important. They weren't as big and monumental as many of my mom's pieces, but they were very personal and they were in little spots. The big ones that were monumental in the house, you had to clear out the whole patio or part of the living room to make a nacimiento, which is an ofrenda, it's an altar. And and for Easter, everything would be decorated. So that tradition is, something I remember as a very small child, and so there's always this storytelling that happens. My grandmother was very colorful when she talked about her mother, her brothers, her father, her mama Pola. So not only in the stories, but when you look at pictures and stuff. So on Day of the Dead, that when my mom talks about bridging generations, it's like you're meeting them. About their life, what how she rolled a cigarette, or something like that. It's very alive in my own memory and in my experience. Although she died long in the 30s, long before I was born. So The altar is a way for the family to stay intact, even though we're not physically together. We're still a family, you know, and we have this communication and connection through stories and photos and our imagination.
How beautifully stated. So we have three generations, technically, of altar makers, invoking your grandmother, yourself,
Yes.
Senora,
Uh-huh.
and Rosanna. And you said that there are other family members that have participated in making the altares with you?
Yeah, my some nieces and nephews have helped with the altar, you know, and I know they probably have a little, you know, little something in their homes, you know, so it's, you know, bringing it along for sure.
And how would you say, have you seen in terms of the tradition of altar making here in East Los Angeles evolve over time? Was it something very visible as we see now? How was it for you when you were?
Actually, it wasn't. It was, my experience was only at home. And at church, but at church it was in my very early days. I was born in 1932. My early years, I remember altares, but with Dia de los Muertos, it wasn't like my mother's description of what she did at home. Now, we didn't have calaveras at all, but always the photographs, always the flowers. My mother grew her own flowers. Many times it was all in white because that's the flowers she grew. And she did have um, cempasúchil. She called them cempoales. I guess it's a short name for cempasúchil. And but those were the colors and calla lilies.
Oh,
It was
beautiful.
part of her altars. And so it was a private and personal thing at home. I didn't see any of this outside of the home. But in my experience, my mother, there's lots of cemeteries here in East LA because it was the outskirts at the turn of the century or even onto the 20th century. One of the cemeteries, the Catholic cemeteries, she and my aunts would gather their bags, we'd walk to the cemetery, and I think of the stories of people in small towns in Mexico, how they take all their deiritis and go to the cemetery. And she would take a lunch for all of us, and my cousins and I would play jumping the gravestones. And then they would call us, and then they had a spread of the food there. We would eat it, and the stories of who was buried there. At that time, we didn't have any very close relatives, but they were paisanos or cousins who had come to the U.S. a long time before. But that brought up the stories of their hometown. Her mother, since it was my mother's cousin, not only of who they were, but how they lived and how they celebrated, the songs they sang. So those were my beginning stories for Day of the Dead. They would decorate the, with whatever few flowers they brought, but the main part for me was listening to the stories. I was fascinated. And then we would eat. And while we were eating, esta fulana de tal hacía unas gorditas de horno que mi mamá, and so the story, it would continue. The stories didn't end. And so that was my first experience of celebrating Dia de los Muertos. Then we'd go home to my mother's little altar, but it was something that had been there all year, but it was dressed up and perked up, with flowers. And the stories, that's what the special part of it. And so it wasn't until 1979 that I first went to Suffolk Graphics. They had started celebrating a community, a public celebration of Dia de los Muertos. And there's a whole story behind it. I'm sure you'll get that. It's a long story, but I came on part of the neighborhood, part of the community, and there was a sign asking for instructors for the workshops for Day of the Dead. I said, I have never had a Day of the Dead celebration out here because when I went there, Sister Karen asked me, are you familiar with Dia de los Muertos? And I told her that story. So, okay, you're hired. And so we did wonderful things. We did huge headdresses for a procession that would take place from the cemetery, Evergreen Cemetery, which was not the same one that I used to go to, but not far. and True Self-Help Graphics in a procession, and we made these huge headdresses, and there were some giant um, paper mache calacas that would be carried to the cemetery, laid there, and then have some kind of ceremony. And then we'd process back uh, to Self-Help Graphics, and then there was a celebration, vendors and music and all that. So that was the beginnings of these big celebrations for the adults at Self-Help Graphics.
In the late 70s.
In the late,
I think in the U.S., right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
Actually, they started just further away from where I came out in 1973. They moved to that building near my house on Cesar Chavez. Then it was Brooklyn Avenue and Gage Avenue. And I think it was 79, 76 when I didn't come. I started doing altars there in 1980 and 81. They were all community altars. It wasn't like my individual altar, but it was part of many artists coming together. But it was a wonderful experience because the things that I had seen on my mother were magnified because it was the stage and everything was big because so many people participated. And that continued to this day. So I became part of that celebration since then. There was a hiatus of about maybe 3 years because I had just become a teacher, an elementary school teacher. But I started doing that, talking about the other resources in my classroom. In fact, Self-Help Graphics, the artist developed a coloring book. First of its kind, I still have copies of it. So that's what I would, present to my students. But mostly I would tell them about my own experience. And that's how I would introduce it to them because it was more personal. And so I started doing altars in my school, 1970, I guess 78 or 9, and continued till I retired in 1999.
And you're still active making.
I am more active now than ever because actually it's all tied to Self-Help Graphics. When Sister Karen passed away suddenly in 1997, her celebration was huge. Of course, so many people from all over came to honor her. And I was asked to do an altar, this time on the stage because they have a reception there at Self-Help Graphics. It turned out to be a monumental altar with so many flowers and artifacts that artists brought, many kinds of artifacts, small paintings, big paintings, and it was such a response of respect and love for her from many sectors that the altar, what started as what I thought was going to be, a normal size, became monumental. But then many of the artists I engaged in, they started, adding things, and I would just direct. By the time it was done, it was beautiful, and I have beautiful photographs of it. I have one here too. But it was the beginning of these monumental altars that I started building, because in subsequent years I was asked to do the community altar on the stage. But previous to that, I had been doing altars, like I said, back in 1980, 81, as part of the art exhibits where I would do my own personal altars. And usually I used a piece of furniture because in my vision, it was like doing a home altar, something you would do at home. And so I still incorporate furniture in many of the altars, and that's when my children started to engage in these altars. The young ones would just do flowers because we would make so many tissue paper flowers. I learned all these flower making skills from my mother. She was an artisana who did everything with paper. And so it just came wonderful, natural thing to make things for the altar, and then it was an art piece. So all these years, it is an art form today, of course, but it's also a cultural thing, a tradition, a spiritual thing. And so I think all these this combination is what I love to do. And one of my mother's wishes was that I carry on these traditions, not just for the others, but for the nacimientos and all these other things. And it's come to fruition. My daughter, Rosanna, Elena, uh, Denise has helped quite a bit. Their children making the flowers and sometimes helping us, with placing things. But my son Javier, who does the foundations, who hangs up and he can construct anything that I draw for him. Because in the early days I would say, well, could you move this here? Could you hang this here? He says, can you just draw me a picture? Then I have an idea. So from then on I started doing these schematics. And they became more and more elaborate as I was given bigger spaces. But what I really love is to make community altars such as these, where my children are involved and where the community comes in. Because that's really what the Dia de los Muertos is all about. So I love the idea and what we do, and what Self Graphics started doing many years ago with me, is called Noche de Ofrenda, where you really focus on the altar, its meaning, its significance, its spirituality, and it's about the people who have passed. And I look forward to that. We're having ours the second soon.
November 2nd. Well, I would love to learn a little bit about how you do and make these community altares or your altares that you have in dedication to past loved ones here at the studio. Would you mind sharing a little bit of how you make your altares and envision them and what elements are important in making an altar?
Well, the basic elements that I have learned and that I employ are, first of all, the photographs and the flowers, and especially the marigold. But other flowers are are fine. I like to use related colors because, of course, the aesthetic of it all. Um, and then a candle and incense, preferably copal, which is a traditional ceremonial incense, and it was used in ancient times. Um, and for me, it's fundamental to have an outgoing arch. My mother would say that's the gateway to the ofrenda, and lets the soul know that it's here to come and partake of the ofrenda. And of course, in most food and drink, water, because it came from a long way. They're thirsty, and those are the basic elements for me. And it's interesting because when I was teaching, I would ask parents of my students. Some had never had this tradition in their family, although they were aware of the other Todos Santos and the other ones, de las Santas Almas. But some of them had different ideas about how to pray, but I accepted, and I wanted to learn as much. And I think I've incorporated many traditions or styles, and it also depends on the theme or the vision I have for that year, because they're never the same. And although in this altar here I have used this idea before, I wanted to do it in this space because it was very special when I first did this ofrenda to the women in my family. It was quite emotional for me at that time, and it is again. And so it has a lot of symbolism for me. Uh, and then, and something very interesting, yesterday a teacher from the high school came in. He had wanted to bring his students here to visit and for me to talk to them. And he says, well, if I can't bring them, I did find a site on the internet that says the basic things for an altar. And it was a list of about 10 things. And he gave me the site, and I said, one of them was, you have to have things I mentioned, but you have to have orange paper for the Aztecs and purple flowers for the Catholic Church. I said, I had never heard of that before. Well, it's in here in this list, and it's from Mexico. And I said, well, I imagine that there's some places somewhere where this is a practice. Oh, I didn't say it, but the tradition of offerings for the dead comes way in ancient times before the conquest. But it's interesting because many people have a certain way, and I say, did you put? Oh, they'll ask me. There's 4 tiers for each, and I kind of go along with that for each phase of our life. And the top one is when we're in heaven, so it's the photograph of the deceased person. And then there's some that, but in Yucatan, there's about 10 tiers. I think it's a matter of maybe aesthetics or for the spaces you have to want so many things in it, because for me, I like it to be full of things and full of color. And so we've added, especially when we do large monumental altars, there's got to be enough room, enough tiers. But I think basically having 3 or 4 tiers is what makes an altar. But I'm not the expert. It's what people want to do, or in their own family or in their own religion. That's their tradition, and I think that's what you should go by. There's no right way. I look at ancient you know, narratives. I look at my mother's way. I look at what some people have done around me, especially from Mexico, with their family tradition, and I love them all. So I incorporate some of them into my altars, and some are non-traditional, like this bed and the one that you're going to see now that Rosanna did. The most important thing is the meaning, the spirituality, and the respect and the heart that you have for it. That's the most important
Thank you. No, I think that's beautiful. Because you're right, I was actually at a Oaxaqueño baker's location, and they had orange and purple flowers at the front of their home, and so and also placed by their altar. So yeah, every region within Mexico or Central or South America have their different traditions, and so you're definitely correct.
And that's interesting because here in Oaxaca, it's one of the cradle of celebrating, making ofrendas, and but they're honoring the Catholic tradition with the purple color. So
Mhm.
it's inclusive of everyone.
My
But
hair
it's
must be
yes,
honoring the Catholic Church. I have
yes.
no idea.
You
Right.
have to get some orange flowers
There we
to
go.
identify with the
Can I,
indigenous roots.
yeah, can I add
Yes,
to what she said?
definitely.
One, there's a couple really good examples of the process that we go through. We did an altar in, I think it was 2008, for my grandparents, my Mama Lupe and Papa. And they were travelers. They loved to travel to Mexico as often as they could. And so we wanted to kind of capture that and their travels from Mictlan to home. And we did an altar at Self-Help Graphics, and we had steamer trunks. We had kind of a setting where they would be changing their clothes or packing their suitcases, and photos of them at Teotihuacan, all the sites, and they're together. One's taking a picture of the other, or my grandfather holding my grandmother's purse, while he's like waiting. It's just like really beautiful photographs, old photographs,
Their
and
passports.
then their passports and postcards with their letters writing home. It was so beautiful. So that's one aspect where you're honoring people that you love, but it's an aspect of their life. You know, you can grab something and just say, "Oh, my grandmother was such a great cook. I'm gonna make a kitchen," or something like that. The other thing that's more conceptual is we did one called Ode to the Old Barrio, which is the block where we live, and Self-Help Graphics is part of that. And all the storefronts, when my mom was growing up, and I got a taste of a lot of it, in the 60s up until the 70s. And so the building that self-help graphics used to be in was partially a mortuary. There was like prosthetics. There was all kinds of stuff going on in there, and we took photos, or we grabbed photos as many as we could of the original spaces, and we made those the highlights of the altar and the building of self-help graphics. It was really cool, and if I can get you photos, I'll get you photos.
Definitely.
Yeah, really cool. So it, I think the feel that um, the intent is to honor and to not forget. So you just start from there.
Well, speaking of that, the intent and to honor, would you be willing to show me some of the altares and ofrendas that you have created in honor of several family members or friends
Sure.
and mujeres that are and others that are very important?
Thank you. Yes. I'll move out of the way.
Well, we could start with this one. Actually, it's still in progress because we're having our Noche de Ofrenda on Monday the 2nd. But it's dedicated, I call it Para las Mujeres de mi Alma. I have to add more photographs because there's many women who I want to honor. My comadre, I have my sister, a couple of aunts, some dear friends, my husband's mother and grandmother. But I I love this idea of having the bed. Of course, her arco is the headboard, and a few of the things that were hers, but mostly the photographs and but I and some of her linens are part of this that I have saved. But I think the bedroom for a mother is a very, if not sacred, a very special place for her children, for her to the place where you find support, comfort, and just closeness. And so I felt that for my mother, I would love to hold her again. Although she's been gone like 22 years, it is emotional because I feel her presence always. And I guess I could tell you, I don't know, I always end with this saying that she taught me, and that's the reason that the essence of doing an altar for those we love, for remembering them, is how they were loved more than anything else. Anyway, so this is all part of it, and recreating an, actually a home space, a home place, where where you where at home is the most intimate place for an altar, and you remember. Sometimes some people have them all year long, but they're just special and they're during this time. And you bring out all the photographs that you can, and so that's what this is.
Thank you.
Just a special note, all these vegetables are from a garden that is built. It's actually like a community garden on the property next door where we played. That would belong to my mother, and it was full of nopales and magueyes. She always had to have nopales and magueyes in her yard. She came to this country, but my brother would say, pero se trajo su tierra. So she loved her country and her customs, her traditions, and that's why I learned them. She taught them to us, and it's become part of my life. And so they were beautiful concepts of nature, of love, of respecting, of growing things, of the land. So here she brought it to East LA.
This is beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you want me to, shall I talk
Yep.
about this one?
One.
Just
Yeah, well, let's
do it quick.
give me one moment really